Welcome one and all to yet another sweet and spicy battle report. Kings of War, Abyssal Dwarfs versus Salamanders. Hello there and welcome. So let's immediately get Mr. Arrow on the screen as we dive into this battle report. 2,000 points, Abyssal Dwarfs, Salamanders. Got my army list right here. I've got the Uncharted Empires book right next to me in case I forget the names of any of the Salamanders units. And let's leap straight onto the first image, shall we? So, push scenario. So D3 tokens per side and one sitting pretty in the centre. 1 victory point for each token you hold at the end. 2 victory points for each token you hold with a unit that's entirely within the opponent's half. Units can carry as many tokens as they want, but they are slowed down to speed 5, and they can't do anything silly like fly or be surged by a caster if they're shambling, which affects my army, definitely. So, the lists. You can see that I've got quite a big bunch in the middle here and not much on the flanks. So, let's see what we've got. Let's go through the Salamanders first of all. Let's see if I can remember the names of the units without actually looking. So, I believe we have a Fire Drake right here, which is a hero mounted on a big flying monster. Pretty standard flying titan kind of stuff. If anyone's watching this live, by the way, then feel free to drop some comments in the chat so I can refer to those occasionally. Got anything tactical to add down there, then feel free. Then we've got some rhinosaurs. Now, there are 2 units of rhinosaurs, both represented by different kinds of models. These ones are the giant frogs, and they have the potion of the caterpillar. There is another big fire drake there. There is a horde of unbloods, I believe they are. They have wild charge, crushing strength 1. There is a Lachilodon there, which is a decently ranged shooting monster. There is a hero, a mounted hero behind there. I can't remember what kind of hero that is, but it's a pretty mediocre one. Pretty much their equivalent of a standard bearer, I think. And there is a phoenix there. I'm going to move the camera out of the way a second, in case that's not very visible, but very nice. Phoenix with all kinds of annoying abilities. Not that great in combat, but shooting, very nice. And a bit more of a close-up there. And there's another horde of unbloods here. Another Lachilodon, and you can see that this has all 3 tokens on it. And there is the other horde of the rhinosaurs. So, 3 tokens on that creature. So not many models on this side that can't hold on to tokens, which is a trend that carries over a little bit into my army, which is unusual because you may remember that I have run lists at this point level with Abyssal Dwarfs where I've taken up to 4 individuals sometimes and war machines. But now that I've got more stuff painted, then I've got more options now for taking units that can actually score. I'm not just fleshing out the list with individuals. PK is in the chat. So we've got an Overmaster on a Great Winged Half-Breed here, all the way out on the right flank, and this has the Staying Stone, just to give it a little bit of extra nerve to make it less likely to be wavered for a low cost of only 5 points. We have the Unstoppable Golem Wall, as usual. We've got the Greater Obsidian Golem and 2 Lesser Obsidian Golem Hordes. The one with the larger crystal, which is here, has the Blade of Slashing, just a nice little bonus for them. We've also got the Maiden Voyage for Infernox, represented by the classic Arhak Soulbinder model, which is like the Marmite of the Abyssal Dwarves. You either love that model or you despise it. I'd compare it to the old Citadel Nagash in that way. Some people think it's the coolest thing ever, and some people are just glad that it's gone. There is an actual Infernox model that's out now, which is very tasty, so I might soon have 2. So he's a defense 6. A little nugget. If these guys are big, beefy rocks, he's just a little pebble, really, with only nerve 13 instead of 17. So he can score, though, which is important for this army, because usually I'm lacking that a bit. Got the half-breeds with the Boots of Striding, once per game, which is usually all they get before they get killed. So all 3 tokens are on the golems on the right. We've got Ironcaster sitting in there with the Shroud of the Saint, so he's got heal 6. So I'm hoping to be healing up this big defense 6 wall that's around him. Because they're all 4 of those units, including Infernox, are all Hellforged, so you can heal all of them. There's a troop of gargoyles, and there are 2 regiments of Black Souls, not Immortal Guard this time, the cheaper option, only down to 2,000 points, and I need those sweet points to fit in some of the juicier stuff, so we're down to Black Souls, which is slightly less tasty than Immortal Guard. And Basuso is all the way out on the left. Susan, in my case, on her own out there. Turn 1, and the Abyssal Dwarfs win the roll-off, and I elect to go first. Now, what I would like to do with this flyer is just go 20 inches forward and just stare sideways into the enemy lines, but you'll notice this horde is actually not deployed all the way forward there, right up to the line, which means that they can actually see. If I were to land there, they would have a nice juicy charge on me. One thing that's important to note actually in this game, we decided that the woods are lower in height than the titans, but the towers are taller. So there's a few titans around, a couple on each side, and they can all see over the woods, but not these towers, so that might be important later on. So, just moved up a little bit into charge range, of course, still threatening the flank of the enemy if they want to advance. And it's giving them something serious to think about, because my opponent doesn't really have any flyers over here. All of his are over at the other end. The Phoenix is kind of central, but the Phoenix probably doesn't want to go fighting against the Great-Winged Half-Breed. You can see a bit of an advance in the middle here, not very fast because they're Abyssal Dwarves, but this unit of Golems has been surged forward. They are the one unit here that really want to be surged because this unit are carrying tokens, so they can't, and the greater Golem, if he gets surged too far, he could actually end up being flank charged by this thing here. So this is the unit that's safe from flank charges if they surge forwards, so that's what's happened there. Infernox has just raced ahead as far as he can go, and inviting the enemy to charge him, because if you charge that little guy, even if you kill him, there's so much around here that can be flanking you. It'd be a bit of a death wish, I think. If a big flyer came in and ate him, then it's just flank central with surge possibilities. And there's how the centre's looking. So I'm sure the enemy aren't just going to fly straight in and attack that puny unit there. Gargoyles in no rush to get involved. They're staying away from the enemy shooting. There's not that much, especially on this side of the table. There are some breath attacks. I think these flyers have a breath attack. Or there's no such thing as a breath attack really now, but a short range attack. Susu is also staying out of charge range. And Susan there just being a bit of a deterrent. So we'll see if the enemy factor in the positioning here when they advance. Do you want to leave a unit to be flanked perhaps by Susan? She's not going to kill you on her own, but she's going to annoy any flyers, especially if I can get anything else into the front of them as well. It's a little bit of a concern, the fact that my opponent has more powerful flyers than I do. There are 2 big juicy flyers that can threaten flanks and really be dangerous. I've only got 1, and Susan, who can just dance around, but she's not that scary about it really. Only 7 attacks, even if she gets in a flank. So middle token not been taken by anyone. And we're on to turn 1 for the Salamanders. So, the Rhinosaurs you'll be able to get a better shot of them in a minute, but the Rhinosaurs moved up onto the hill, so potential of adding some more thunderous charge to their already very potent attack. Then the Unbloods. Yep, this is the Lachilodon with the tokens, hiding behind them so that the Great Half-Breed can't just fly over the top and charge straight into it because there's nowhere for it to land. And in the middle, the other one is up into the woods, going to shoot through. This hero's got a bit of a ranged attack as well, I think. And there is a ranged attack. I think it's Fireball on the Phoenix there. Everything else is playing a little bit safe, moving inwards, threatening my centre. So if I charge anything into this kind of area, then it's going to be flying into the flank big time there. And this cavalry unit, they have the Potion of the Caterpillar, so they don't care about this difficult terrain. So I don't want these 3 really hard-hitting units threatening my flank, so I'm going to have to decide what to do about that. Daniel says hi there from Australia. Hello there. So these are going to be some very far-reaching tactical tips and insight. And the Lachilodon there does 3 damage to Infernox, which is actually quite scary because he's only nerve 13. So it was a good roll. He is defense 6, and I don't have much inspiring in this list. The only thing that's inspiring that's anywhere near any of my units is the Ironcaster, and he's not actually close to this guy at all. So you can see him all the way back there, the only inspiring source for all of this, because Basusu's out here, and the big great-winged half-breed is up here somewhere. So not a lot of inspiring in the middle. We'll see if that risk pays off. Turn 2. So what am I going to do here? Well, if I move myself out of the way, my opponent has made a little bit of a mistake here with this horde. They've pushed forward, but they've gone needlessly far, which means that the great-winged half-breed has a flank charge option available on them. Not only that, Infernox also has a flank charge option available on them as well. He is also just in the flank, so there's going to be 2 big hard-hitting units that don't have that many attacks, but when they get into the flank, it's the ultimate pain train. These 2, 1 flank each, and that unit is in big trouble. Everyone else isn't going to be that eager to engage this horde, because there's all this staring into the flank, so I'm going to just attack this unit. I've got gargoyles to attack the front, which is going to pin them there and stop them charging into my flank with whatever does advance. And Susan can charge the flank of them, and you never know, it probably won't be enough to kill them, but it should be enough to do some damage and make a start on them. And then we'll see where everything else ends up in the centre. So turn 2, and of course, that double flank charge, 1 in each flank, very tasty indeed, and that horde is just eaten. You can see that Infernox, I don't know if I mentioned it, he has the healing brew, by the way, and he used it there to get 1 of his wounds back. Just a little tiny bit of an upgrade for him. And the Great-Winged Half-Breed is out of the charge arc of this unit, so they're stuck for a turn with nothing to fight. And these are the directions I chose to face at the end. Of course, I could have turned this guy backwards to face that way. I could have even turned them both to face in that direction, because there's no imminent threat here apart from the Phoenix. And I was looking at its stats, and it's okay. If it gets a rear charge, then I might actually have to be concerned. So there's no point needlessly presenting the rear of my very important big flyer to the Phoenix. So just keeping it safe, nothing's getting any flanks on it. Unless this thing wants to charge it in the flank, which would be an odd choice, considering it's carrying all the tokens, so it'd probably just want to hide instead. And it's looking very tasty in the middle now. Gargoyles in the front, Suso in the flank, 5 damage total, not enough to worry them. I think they're unwaverable with pretty high nerve, so it's going to take at least another round to kill them. We'll see what the enemy decides to do about this though. Do they countercharge Basusu? Leave the gargoyles there? Do these guys get involved? Find out. And everyone else pushes up. The only thing that I made sure of is that I wasn't presenting any flanks to the flyers. So this unit and this unit, making sure the flanks are not open. And everyone down here is too far away to be hit by the flyers. The half-breeds are just chilling behind there because one of the Lachilodons, for example, would see them as a really juicy target. Especially if they're out in the open with no possibility of any cover and they could easily die getting shot by them. So I've got them in a spot where if they do get shot, they're going to get cover at the very least, making it not the optimum thing, possibly. Okay, turn 2 for the Salamanders. Ian says evening, hello there. I know how much you love Abyssal Dwarfs. And what do? Well, these Rhinosaurs countercharge into Basusu, which is probably the best option here. You've got a chance to waver Susan, maybe. They have lost their Thunderous Charge, though, so they're not nearly as devastating. Which also opens up this section of the Gargoyles for something to attack them, which they are going to do in a minute. This unit just turns around to face the rear of the Great Winged Half-Breed there. And you can see the Lachilodon with the tokens is just running away. And here the Phoenix has just sidestepped a bit so it can't be charged by this big, terrifying monster. And this horde of Unbloods decide, you know what, we don't care if you've got shambling units on both sides of the unit we want to charge. We don't care about exposing our flanks to them. We're going to have a go, we're going to try and take out these golems in one go and pick up this push token in the centre of the game as well. Let's see. KK, do you feel like Susan never lists any serious weight on those flanking attacks, or is it more so just to give your opponent something to worry about, split their focus? Well, individual flyers that pack a bit of a punch, it's very versatile, because if your opponent gives you any juicy targets for them, like a war machine, for example, then you can easily gobble that up. Otherwise, really just there to present a bit of a threat and to give those 7 extra attacks to any one of my units that might need the assistance in a combat. Often you can just dance a flyer like that around, and unlike other flyers, the enemy don't really have to worry about exposing different facings to you, though, because you're not getting extra attacks for the flank or rear. So really it's just adding a bit of punch where needed and harassing units as well. And the enemy are hesitant to go into range because they see Basusu, that's going to hit pretty hard. I don't want to be attacking great big flyers with Susan, because she's not really going to win with so few attacks. And they usually have better nerve than she does as well, and more crushing strength. So an annoyance, definitely. Okay, so that unit, Cloud in there, you'll be able to see what kind of conundrum they're in a minute though. And one of the flyers goes into the gargoyles. They had to turn side on though because it's so pokey. Mantic love designing these brilliant new big chunky models that don't fit on their bases. So they brought in the 75mm base for these big monsters and then went and made even bigger models that don't even fit on them. So they are a bit pokey. So if you want some modelling advice, then maybe get some kind of height underneath the monster on these bases so that the small units that you're going to be charging, you can poke your stick above their heads. And there you can see in the middle, I don't think I would have attempted this charge here. The chances of killing that Defense 6 unit while they're inspired is quite slim, and there's not even going to be surge required to get these two into the flank. And even if they kill the unit and overrun a considerable distance to get out of sight of these units, I'm still going to be able to surge one of them into the flank with half-breeds in the front. So this unit is just asking to die here. So maybe there was some thinking behind it. Maybe it was, we've already lost one horde to a bit of a positioning error. Let's just send this one in and take something down with us. If we're going to go down, because it's probably going to die anyway, looking at all this staring at it, let's go down swinging and take something down with us, which is sometimes a valid tactic. And Infernox takes a wound from the ranged attack, this guy. And then the Phoenix fireballs into the Great Winged Half-Breed. Only one wound though, so nothing to worry it. And the gargoyles are of course dead. And so you can see how it ends up here. It wouldn't actually fit in that spot because of these big pokey tails. So we've put a blank base there to show the exact spot that it ends up and just kept the model behind it. It's always handy to keep a blank base the size of one of your units, especially if it's very pokey. And this is the to wound rolls from the Rhinosaurs onto Susan. Wounding on 4s. Look at all those failures. Only 3 of them succeed. So Susan is perfectly happy now. And this unit, the fact that they haven't killed her, were they likely to kill her anyway? They would have hoped to get a waiver, maybe, but they've now got their flank open to 2 regiments of Black Souls, so that could be bad news for them. And there's how the centre's looking. So it's still looking pretty good. I do have to worry about these units a little bit, because they are staring into the central area, so I'll need to do something about them, or just avoid them thoroughly. This side is looking very scary with the 2 big flyers, but let's see what we can do about this. Also, the fact that that unit charged in means that I no longer have to commit and go forwards, which means that I'm opening up my flanks. I can now sit back a bit, which I'm very pleased with. So only 3 wounds were done in this combat, which is disappointingly low. You wouldn't have expected these to necessarily die, but 3 wounds, very, very poor turn there. AK, those lizards are channeling their inner slayer. Yep, just charge straight in there without a care in the world. You're going to die eventually. So turn 3. So if we look at this wide shot here, you can see that I wouldn't say it's an issue exactly, but the Great Winged Half-Breed, the way I've positioned it, facing just directly that way, because I thought maybe there would be something to worry about in the middle, but the flyers didn't come in. It's now in a bit of a tricky situation because I can't really charge in the flank there. Because even if I kill this unit, which is going to die unless I double one it, but then I would have to turn backwards facing this way, and I would take a charge from this unit on the hill. And that would probably kill Great Winged Half-Breed. It might not kill him, but he's defense 6. And there's the Phoenix there as well. So what I'm actually going to do with this unit is just fly out of the way so no one can charge me next turn. Keep it alive for a turn, because it could be important later on. And there's no critical combat that I want to get involved in. Whereas this unit is going to get triple charged here. That's just dead, regardless. No need to throw this in right now, so I'm just going to move it up there. Okay, here we go. So, there he goes over there. Always got to be careful when you've got any big flyer like this with really pointy wings, especially one that's slightly unbalanced in the weight department because it has that big giant metal head and saddle and just a plastic body. Deploying it anywhere near your opponent's table edge, it's always a potential death wish, especially at a tournament where you've got people walking past the tables as well. If you deploy on one of the flanks and your table's on the end of a row, you've got people walking past with loose clothing. If somebody's pocket just hooks onto that wing, suddenly it's and there you go. So anything that overhangs the base, that's a big concern, because if you go right up to the table edge, there's quite a significant chunk of that wing that's hanging off the table. It's always something to consider. Infernox is just charging into this guy, hoping to get lucky and get an overrun into the flank of the Lechilodon, which had its flank protected by this guy. But only does 3 wounds. So Infernox has got his rear exposed to some of the units over there, but Infernox is not a priority for them. So in the centre, there's a charge in the front, charge in the flank, charge in the flank, Horde dead. And the Greater Golem positions itself. Can't see what its threats are. But I didn't factor in that the Phoenix might want to attack this guy. So I've left the flank open to the Phoenix because I'm not scared of it, because it's only got crushing strength 1. So we'll see whether that's an issue. We can look at the wide shot in a minute. Over here, so the 2 regiments of Black Souls flank charge those Rhinosaur frogs, and with Basusu as well, look at all that. Get them up to 18 wounds, and they are toast. And it might look like this unit's overhanging the base there, but they're actually just higher because they're sitting on top of this bit of field there. Difficult to... And... yeah, okay, so you can see what I mean here. So this Phoenix is in the flank, and it would have been easy for me to pivot this guy so that nobody is in his flank. But I didn't consider that a threat. I thought the most likely course of action for the Phoenix was going to be to turn round and maybe fireball this guy, because there's no chance of me turning around and charging it in one go. So I thought that was a possibility there. This unit is of course going to charge him from the hill, so we'll see whether he can survive that. I've got the half-breeds position there, they're ready to deliver a furious counterattack. And this unit is holding 4 tokens now. So it could have been an option. That token has been picked up, I think. Or it was picked up by the unit that was here, and then they dropped it, so it is going to go onto this unit's base in a second. So it would have been an option to put a token on this unit, so you've got the tokens split up. Especially because this unit's further forward, and it would be easier to keep them in the enemy half. But we shall see. And they've made sure not to expose a flank to either of these 2 flyers. Turn 3, so they go for the double charge on the Greater Obsidian Golem, including the Phoenix in the flank, which I was not expecting. It's not something I really thought about because I didn't think it would join in. So I didn't check to make sure whether I was exposing any particular facing. So we'll see if that comes back to bite me here. Let's see. Raphael and Deep Red are in the chat. Hello there. So, the Lechilodon here charges into these golems, which really, it's a delay tactic, because they've got 4 tokens. I don't think the other one's been put on their base yet when this picture was taken, but they do have them all. And really, if it can pin back this unit and stop them from escaping my half, then that's going to be very important, because it doesn't look like I'm going to go after the enemy unit that's in my half with 3 tokens, so I need to get them into enemy territory in the game. Infernox takes a round of combat from this thing, not very scary at all. And not only does the Lechilodon charge into them, but the two big flyers also steam in, one of which is represented by a blank base again because they're so OP. So at first it looked like it was just going to be this guy, but then they decided to join in as well because they were all in the front. And all three in there. Will that be enough to kill the unit? Possibly. They do have a decent number of attacks, those flyers. But we are inspired and defense 6 and unwounded because I think the Ironcaster healed them last turn. So this combat here, this unit does 12 damage to the Greater Obsidian Golem. It's pretty scary, but he could survive that roll. But then the 3 extra damage added by the Phoenix just tip him over the edge and he's dead. Phoenix, well used there. It was worth charging it into the flank. And they now turn around to face this threat. So they'll have to take a charge from the half-breeds, but the half-breeds only have 16 attacks. They're unlikely to kill that unit in one hit, but they're going to give it a try anyway. Next, that's how they end up positioning. 6 damage here. And I think that's all they do in total, so a very disappointing roll from both these big flyers. Only 6 damage done there. Very poor indeed on this unit that's holding 4 tokens. So it's looking very healthy for me despite the loss of that unit. I've got the advantage in terms of number of units, but these two aren't really affecting the game. All the tokens are over here or over here. So I'm starting to regret having 2 units of Black Souls over on this flank. I could have maybe had one of them over on the right. They're not really achieving anything. Turn 4. So, Great Winged Half-Breed turns back round to join the action, and this is as far as it'll go. It wouldn't rest on the hill, so it's just sitting there with the hill on top of it instead. And Half-Breeds make their not hindered charge because they use their Boots of Striding. 7 wounds, but not enough to kill the unit. That's quite a low number of wounds there. I was hoping for a tiny bit more than that. I suppose it's not the worst, though. And here, you can see that one of these big flyers is toast. So let's just go back and look at what happened here. So, these guys are actually ahead of that flyer, but Ironcaster moves out the way, they turn round to face that way, and then they are surged into the flank. There's also Infernox back there, and he can see this one. So he just drops back an inch, and then he's nimble as well, so he just charges into the rear of that Fire Drake. I think that's what they're called. So that's dead. Charge in the flank, charge in the rear from Infernox, and this unit charges into the front of the other flyer. 10 wounds, which is quite nice, but it survives. So I wasn't able to do any healing this turn because I needed to surge them into the flank. And looking very good there. Everyone else moving in. Susan is just positioning ready for next turn, ready to join in and charge something to help out. And turn 4 for the Salamanders. So this Lechilodon is just hiding with 3 tokens behind the tower now to stop my Great Winged Half-Breed from being able to charge it because there's nowhere to physically fit because of the terrain. So if I wanted to charge it, I would have to fly over here somewhere. And even if I did that, it could then move round to the other side of the tower. So it's a very nice little hiding place it's got here. So this guy puts another wound on Infernox, and it's scary when he takes any damage at all with his low nerve. So the charge in the front here of the Lesser Obsidian Golems, they're already damaged, and it's now enough to kill them from these 2 units there. And then they just turn, face these golems, which you would think would present me with a flank, because I could just shuffle sideways and then surge into the flank. But my understanding of the rules is correct, and this was all played correctly. The pivot, as part of the reforming action after combat, has brought this unit to within an inch of the golem horde, which means that they can't move unless they put themselves further away than they started from this unit, which means they can't move sideways because they end up the exact same distance away. So they cannot actually reach the flank. So they're just going to have to charge in the front. And the Rhinosaurs kill the half-breeds They only do 7 wounds, but they get a nice nerve roll, and there was no inspiring nearby. So look, the Ironcaster all the way up there. He's the only inspiring thing that's close. The other one is up here. So I'm used to running Bracky quite a lot, and he has a 9-inch inspiring range, so putting him in the middle of your lines just inspires everything. So we're lacking a bit of inspiring in this list, perhaps. And what am I going to do next turn? Well, this guy, you'll notice actually that the Lachilodon has overrun a little bit, which means that Infernox can't see it, so he can't charge it. But the big Great-Winged Half-Breed can see it, and that can charge. Will almost certainly kill it. And because it's going to be in the flank, then eat it and eat all the tokens. But it is in my half at that point, so I would need to get the flyer out of my half again. And you can't fly when you're carrying tokens, so I would have to push through the enemy units and just kill as much as possible here. So what else am I going to charge? Infernox is going to charge the flank of these Rhinosaurs and try and finish them off. They're already wounded, and a flank attack from a little combat beast like him should be enough. These golems into the front of the flyer. Hopefully that'll be enough to kill it because it's already wounded as well. And Susan is just going to pick something and attack it, and most likely to be this guy here. Because at the moment the only thing that could stop me winning is if I get pinned in enemy territory. After I kill this thing and steal the tokens, if I get stuck in my own half and don't make it into the enemy zone, then I will lose the game, because the enemy has those 3 tokens in my half over there. So they're going to be worth 2 each. So I need to kill units to make sure that my opponent can only provide a small number of roadblocks, whatever unit is carrying the tokens out, most likely this one. Turn 5, so there's the charge with the Great-Winged Half-Breed. Obviously it kills the unit and picks up those tokens, because those were the tokens that it stole from my Lesser Obsidian Golem Horde after combat. And its plan, of course, would be to just pick them up and just run into my half as far as possible, so I can't get the tokens out again. So I've put that plan, stopped that plan before it could take effect too much, and 4 tokens on the Great-Winged Half-Breed, unwounded. So it's looking safe, but can I escape my half by the end of the game? Infernox kills off the Rhinosaurs there. Susu puts more damage onto this guy, but not enough to kill it. And the Lesser Obsidian Golems here with the front charge on the Fire Drake kill it. So, the enemy do not have much left at all. They've only got 3 models left. Got this guy, got the Phoenix, and a Lachilodon over here with 3 tokens. I've got quite a lot left, but at the moment I'm losing the game because this guy is in my own half. So, look at him there, just chilling out with those 3 tokens. That's worth 6 victory points at the moment. Okay, so this is turn 5 for the Salamanders now. Phoenix charges in, and this guy doesn't charge in. He actually stays back a little bit. So I can't charge in that guy, and I'm not sure what the reasoning is exactly for putting him there, because what almost ended up happening was that I almost had the ability to move back an inch and pivot and charge this guy. But of course you lose nimble when you're disordered. So I'm obviously going to take, I would think I would take 1 damage from the Phoenix probably. This thing pops out from behind its hiding place because there's no one threatening it right now, and shoots Infernox off the table. Look at that. He's gone. So 3 damage done here from the Phoenix, which is actually quite good. Good job there from the Phoenix, but it's not going to be enough to kill it. And so all that matters now is, can I get this guy into the enemy half with the tokens? There are 2 things in front of him. If I counter-charge the Phoenix, then I can overrun past this guy, but then he'll still be alive, so he'll have another turn to hop round and get in front of me again. And with the exact positioning of the way these units are here, I do not quite have enough space to pull back 1 inch, pivot, and hit this unit here. It was painfully close. We put a spare base down under here and started rotating it, trying to get it perfectly even so it was correct, and then getting the laser out to see if the corner could reach any part that wasn't just the actual tip of the corner there, and it wasn't clear enough, so we didn't go ahead with that. it was leaning towards no, so that's what we went with. But what you'd really need to be absolutely sure, I've seen some people have got them, you've got two bases, one on top of the other, and they have a hole through the middle and something attaching them together, a little stick poking through, so you can rotate the one on top and you can get perfect rotation then, so you can see exactly where it should be when you pivot a unit. I think that's something I need to look into, because situations like this are just way too fiddly without that. So, turn 6, Basusu just moves over here to threaten this thing, and if there's a turn 7, maybe I'll be able to kill it. So, you can see that I charged into the Phoenix. And this guy in the front, these guys went into the flank, killed the Phoenix, they went back D3. This guy overran. If he overruns 5 inches, then I get into fully within the enemy half. Guess how much I rolled? 1 inch. So, advancing 1 inch forward with all the tokens, which means I'm still 4 inches away from being fully inside the enemy half. So I'm going to need turn 7. And these guys are just quite happy there. So that's how the game is looking at the end of my turn 6. So, enemy turn 6. Achillodon shoots a bit. I think just shoots at Basusu, doesn't really do much. And this guy charges into the front. So ignore where the model actually is. It's actually at the end of that ruler. Charges straight in to Great Winged Half-Breed. Not even worrying about doing damage, because you can't ground it because it's already grounded because it's carrying tokens. I can't drop the tokens and fly away because that wouldn't win me the game. So it doesn't need to do damage. It just needs to be sitting there right in front of me, which it does. And look at this. So that if the game had ended there, I would have lost. But we do get a turn 7 with a roll of a 4. Turn 7 dice. So here we go on turn 7. Basusu charges into this thing, does 5 damage, and like the Achillodon, which means that a nerve roll of 8 with no inspiring would have killed it, and that would have also very likely won me the game. And Basusu could not roll 8 on the nerve test though. So that is still alive. And here, a double charge onto that individual, because we measured to check whether the lesser obsidian golems would be automatically able to get out of the way of the overrun, even with only a fallback of 1 inch. And we worked out that with the width of the units, then falling back 1 inch would leave enough space for the Great Winged Half-Breed to overrun past them. So it was guaranteed not to be a blockage. So they both charged in just to make sure, killed it, and then we've got the overrun. So we overran 1 inch last turn, which means that we're 4 inches away from getting into the enemy territory completely, which is where you need to be to score the bonus points. So a 50-50 chance of getting into the enemy half. Rolled a 3. Look at that. So slightly less than an inch away from victory. And just a picture of an inch there, just to show you how close it is. But look at that. Slightly less than 1 inch. So if I'd rolled one more on the overrun, for this turn or the last turn, then that would have been a win for the Abyssal Dwarfs. But as it is, it's looking very bad at the moment, unless the Achillodon finds some way to kill itself, which I don't think is possible. Or it somehow finds a way to get back into its own half, which would be unlikely. Then it's going to be a loss for the Abyssal Dwarfs here, but look at that. So it overran in total 4 inches off 2 overruns, which obviously is a little bit below average. But of course there was a 50-50 roll to determine whether we even got a turn 7. So stuck in my own half by less than an inch, and here's turn 7 for the enemy. So the Achillodon just tries to kill Susan, doesn't do it. That's the only remaining unit for the enemy though. I've got Susan, Great Winged Half-Breed, one of my Golem hordes, both Black Soul regiments, and the Ironcaster still alive. But it is a loss for the Abyssal Dwarfs, 6 victory points to 4 because of that 1 inch that it couldn't quite make it into the enemy half. What can you do? Well, here's what I could have done differently. I could have actually focused on killing this thing instead of ignoring it, because I was so confident in the way it was going in the middle. I thought, I can just ignore that. I'm easily going to get these 4 tokens and just get into the enemy half, but ended up getting a little bit clogged up, didn't manage to kill the enemy units that were there quite fast enough, and as a result, got stuck. And this thing didn't end up dying. And 5 wounds off 1 round of combat, if I'd gone after and tried to attack it sooner, even if the tokens were just resting on the floor, that would have taken away the imperative to get this unit out of my half. So that would have been something to consider. The Black Souls, having 2 out on this flank wasn't really necessary. But of course, when you deploy, you don't know where the tokens are going to go. So I could have had 1 on each flank, and that way I would have had something to worry this unit with as it was coming down here, alone, unopposed. Have used those Black Souls to go and attack it. And Ian says, damn, that's wholly in enemy half. Yes, you only get the bonus points if the unit is entirely within the enemy's half. Yes, Dicey, coming up short indeed, by less than an inch. But what can you do about that, really? Other than deploy differently and play differently, and roll differently on the dice. There's quite a lot you can do about it, really. But alas, it's too late now. At least it wasn't in a tournament anyway. So, this list. This might be the first time I've ever taken an Abyssal Dwarf list with no offensive shooting whatsoever. No mortars, no decimators, no fireball, nothing. The only shooting attacks I've got were Surge and Heal, which you really call those attacks? I don't know about that. So, no shooting at all. Did it work? I think the list did a pretty good job. Everything in there seemed to work. It was just maybe I could have positioned a couple of units differently, prioritised some targets differently. And other than that, I don't have too many complaints about it. I think I had enough units in this list to be scoring. I didn't necessarily have to have all my tokens in one basket, as it were. If, for example, I had some tokens on a different unit and got them into the enemy half, then I could have scored more points. So it was 6-4. If I'd had 2 of my tokens on a different unit, ultimately, which had got into the enemy half, I would have scored 2 for these 2, and then 4 for them, which would have made it 6-6. So I could have got a draw out of it in that case. So maybe it's something to consider, putting your tokens on different units. And there we go. So I didn't put any tokens on the Black Souls because I thought they're going to be far too easy to kill. Enemy flyers. So didn't think that was a good idea. And in the end, maybe the Black Souls' worst bit of positioning, like I said, one of them over there would have been nice. Great Winged Half-Breed did a great job at killing things. It helps when the enemy present you with a nice juicy flank board that was there. Infernox did a good job actually. He killed a couple of units. Not quite single-handedly, but he definitely paid for himself before he got killed. And there are some other lists that I can take at 2,000 points that are similar. I can bring some shooting in. If I wanted to, I could put in a mortar instead of Infernox. That would leave me with a few extra points for upgrades as well. I could even think about taking out Susan and putting in a mortar or 2. Take out Susan and put in Bracky to get the extra inspiring, because I was lacking a bit of that in this game. So I've got some options. There is a tournament coming up next week, but there's no list submission date. Tinkering all the way up to that with the 2,000 points and see what I want to take there. I definitely want to take some nice new models though, because nice, they look cool and they're interesting, which is certainly more important than winning, as we know. Okay, time to wrap this one up, I think. Any more last minute comments? Get them in now, because this video is about to end. I don't think I forgot any of the names of the Salamander units, apart from that individual, whose name I didn't even to begin with, so can it be considered forgetting? Say no. Any last minute comments? So don't forget to check out all the links in the description if you want a nice juicy battle mat like this one. There's a link to those. There's links to all my various social media, my Facebook group, so you can keep up with everything going on in my hobby world and this channel. There's all the various fundraising sources down there if you want to give me a portion of your life savings to keep producing more juicy, high-quality, educational battle report content. KK, what do you think of Mantic's new Abyssal Dwarf models? Well, actually, Let's get the webcam back on a second. In fact, let's enlarge, because I've actually got the Charnox right here, which is going to be mostly built for Vanguard, but I'm thinking of magnetizing its feet so I can stick it in a horde of obsidian golems as well. I may have to make another horde to actually make space for it. And then, of course, I've also got the Immortal Guardian, who's like an Immortal Guard champion for Vanguard, but I could easily run him as an Overmaster on foot in my army as well. And I've also got the Hexcaster right here being assembled. So that is the Vanguard booster. All of those things also very useful for the main army though, of course. And, this is a little sneak preview of people. This is the Abyssal Dwarf Chariot, which doesn't have anything pulling it yet, but I am working on that. A top secret project for you there. So let's shrink back into the corner, shall we? There we go. And disappear again. Okay, will you buy Hellfane? I will definitely get a Hellfane at some point because it's just too tasty not to get it. And the Grotesques, I think, are too tasty not to get as well. So I'm definitely going to be getting some of those. We'll see exactly when that is. I like the Grotesques, and I like their rules as well. So I would like to have some of those available for my army, especially for the larger point levels, where I can fit in all my juicy stuff. Hellfane is a really nice model. Will I be able to fit that in with the Greater Obsidian Golem and the Great Winged Half-Breed? I would very much like to put them all in the same army at some point, so you'll have to keep your eyes peeled for that one. And with that, PK says, I think the Grotesques are my favourite. Yeah, they are very nice. I'm thinking of painting them in kind of the same kind of reddy, orangey colour that I've done the Gargoyles and the Great Winged Half-Breed's face. I think I could do the Grotesques all in that colour and then just pick out the armour and accessories and the spikes and stuff in with my army. So, wrapping up the video, as I said, don't forget to like, subscribe, check out all the links and all that good stuff. And all that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.